Daf Tzadi Vav Amud Aleph will begin at Tzadi Hey Amud Beis, 5 lines from the bottom. Continue along with the dinim of the kelim and when they are tomei, when they're tohar, and the different shiurim of holes in the various kelim. Amar Ravasi Shamati, I heard that a kli cheres, an earthenware vessel, a kli cheres shiur k'moitzi rima, that the shear to render it tohar is if the hole is the size of a rima, a pomegranate. Omer le Rava said, Shema lo shamat el v'mukav tzamid pasel. That you're saying that the shear is that large, that it's the size of a remain. Maybe you only heard it at legabi what's negeya to a mukav tzamid pasel. If it's a kli cheres that's sealed, and in an oil amaze, it protects the contents of the keli. If it has a hole the size of a remain, it no longer protects the interior, the contents of the keli. Maybe what you meant, what you heard, k'moitzi remain, is legabe the din of tzamid pasel, because legabe other dinim, it would not be the size of a remain. It wouldn't be that large. For example, what do you mean legabe tzamid pasel? V'harava hu da'amar mukav tzamid pasel ha'chiyivchas v'rubai. Rava himself said, in order to say that it no longer protects the contents of the kli, it has to be a majority, a rive of the kli that's broken, not remain. Loikasha habarava ve'habazutri. The Gemara says they're both true. In a large kli, then we say verubai. If it's a small one, if it's a small kli, then we say moitzi remain. Once it's the size of a pomegranate in a small kli, then it's bottle of the same kli, and therefore it's not matzil the contents of the kli. It doesn't protect the contents of the kli from the tomb of the oil of mace. That's Shita's. Rashi Taisus has a different approach to this. Amar Ravasi Shainin, we learn kli cheres shiur b'kainis mashke. The shear of kli cheres, the hole has to be so large of that liquids could enter it. If it's a very small hole that liquids would drip out, that does not negate it from being a kli. When we say that the shear of a kli cheres is that it's only if it has that type of a hole where liquids could enter into it. But if it's so small that liquids could not enter in, it only could exit it, it could only drip out of it, that does not negate it from being a kli in any manner. That tiny size of a hole, that's maisi mashke, it's only mentioned in gistra, as we mentioned before. If you have a kli that's broken, so it's broken, if its tongue becomes tor. But if a person now designated that to use it as a protector, to put it under another kli that has a hole, and to protect the liquids from dripping out, over there, a person would use a broken piece of a kli, would use a shard of it to put it underneath another kli to prevent the liquids from dripping out, to use it as a kind of a patch for another kli, as a coaster for another kli, in order to not to throw out, to still be able to retain another kli that has a small hole. But if the broken piece itself has even the tiniest hole, even the hole of ki moitzi mashke, then it's bottled from a kli. Normally, a kli that's a kli shalem with a tiny hole, kim moitzi mashke, that does not negate it from being a kli. It's only if it's kim machnes, not kim moitzi. But a gistra, a shard, a broken piece of a kli that was now designated as a gistra to protect another kli from losing its liquid, there, even the tiniest hole negates it from being a kli. My time, because you're not going to say bring a gisra to be underneath a gisra, which in itself is protecting another kli. You're not going to use a gisra for a gisra. So therefore, if the gisra has even the tiniest hole and then the liquid is dripping out, so it's not functional, you're not going to try to salvage that gisra with another gisra. So only over there we say, if it's k'moitzi mashke, that it's tar. The two Marav and Marav and Eretz they argued. One says the shear is a moitzi riman. They say that the shear of that we're talking about to be considered a otzitz nokuv And to be as far as Hechsher Zroim is Kemaitzi Riman. If it's Kemaitzi Rimain, then we say, if it's the size of a pomegranate, then we say it's considered to be Nokov, it's considered to be attached to the ground, and liquids will not be Machshet Legabel Tuma because it's still considered connected to the ground. And the other one says the size of a small root. Simen is to know which are the shiurim that are in discussion. We have a principal klal by korbanos echad marba. One brings a larger korban. Echad mamid. Someone doesn't bring a large korban, only brings a mincha, which is not so expensive. But as long as he's doing l'shem shemaim, he's doing his utmost. So if an ani can't afford more than a mincha, and Rabbi Shalom considers that to be as if he brought something very large and very expensive. Here also we have the one is a larger shear, the largest shear, the Rimain, and the other one is the small shear, the Shorish Katan, which is the smallest of the three shiurim of the Shorish Katan, the Rimain, the Zayas, and the Rimain. So we have the two opposites. That's a siman to remember what the shiurim that they argue about. He says the shear is it's the size of an olive. If kli cheres has a hole the size of an olive, if that kli was tomei, now it becomes tohar. They're like kalim that are made out of dung, or made out of stones, or made out of clumps of earth, and she'ein mekabel tuma, which are not susceptible to tuma, loimi divrei Torah, nam b'deraisa, loimi divrei seifin. Also, however, to say that it's no longer considered a kli to protect the contents of the kli and the oil of maize, rubai, the shear of the kli cheres is, and it has to be so large that a majority of it is broken. Otherwise, it does protect the contents from the tumah of the oil of maize. New parak. Hazayak. If a person throws an item from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim, or Mishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYochid, or the opposite from the Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYochid, he's chayiv. So a person is not chayiv not only for carrying from one Rishus to the other, he's chayiv for also throwing. We'll see in the Gemara where was throwing in the Mishkan, but he's chayiv for throwing as well. If he throws it, however, from a Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid, so Midoraisa is throwing from one Rishus HaYochid to another Rishus HaYochid, there should be no problem. However, if it's in a case where there's a street between them, so it's flying over the Rishus HaRabim, Rabbi Kiva Mechayiv, Rabbi Kiva says Yechayiv because of the principle of Kluta Kamisha Uncha. We view it like it was thrown from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim. It's like it's part of that Rishus HaRabim that it's flying over, and from the Rishus HaRabim to the Rishus HaYochid, because Rabbi Kiva subscribes to the principle of Kluta Kamisha Uncha. If it's part of the air of the Rishus HaRabim, it's like it landed in the Rishus HaRabim. The Chacham say no, it's potter. We don't consider it as landed in the Rishus HaRabim, so it's potter. We consider it like throwing from the Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid. Ketzad shtei gzus roi zu keneged zu b'Rishus HaRabim. If you have two balconies, one on either side of the street, so there's a Rishus HaYochid, there's a street between them, and there's another Rishus HaYochid. Ha-maishid v'azorik mizul azu potter. If one is Maishid, if he passes an item from one balcony over the Rishus HaRabim into the other balcony, or if he throws from one balcony to the other balcony, he's potter. That's a Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid, that's a Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid, derech the Rishus HaRabim. So that's with a Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid with a Rishus HaRabim be'emsa. So that's a case where the Chachamim say that you're potter. But even the Chacham would say, Shtehim b'dyuta achas, but if they're on the same side of the street. So previous cases, one balcony is on one side of the street, for instance, one is on the east side of the street, the other is on the west side of the street. and he threw from one to the other, or he passed from one to the other, then in that case, according to the Chum, you're potter. But if they're on the same side of the street, one is a little further south, one is a little further north, they're on the same line. And even if in that case, there is between the two balconies, they're hanging over, the balconies are overhanging the street. So the balcony, there's a street, and the balcony is overhanging the street, and you have one in front of the other. So between them is a Rishus Harabim. At least the ground level is a Rishus Harabim. Even if on the top level this air is above 10, so the airspace between them is not the Aver of the Rishus Harabim, because above 10, on the ground there was a Rishus Harabim, the airspace above 10 is the Aver Mokim Patur. But if the ground beneath them is a Rishus Harabim, and they're passing from one balcony or throwing from one balcony to the other on the same side of the street, then we say, if one passes from one to the other, Hazayrik Potter. Hazayrik would be Potter. That's still considered to be throwing from a Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid. He's Potter. But Hamayshid, if he passes an item from one balcony to the other, up or down, then he's Chayim. Why is that? Because that was what the Levim used to do in the Midbar. When they used to transport the Mishkan, they traveled in the Midbar in the desert, so they transported the boards of the Mishkan on wagons. They used to travel in a straight line. So they used to travel along the road. The road was the Rishus Harabim. You had one wagon in front of the other wagon. They were the same line. The space between them was the Rishus Harabim. Now they used to, when they dismantled the Mishkan, they took the boards and they passed the boards from one wagon up to the next wagon. And that's how they dismantled it. They passed it forward, they filled up one wagon, then the wagon beneath them, behind them, and the wagon behind them. And then when they camped, so then they now passed the boards back down and reassembled the Mishkan. So they used to pass the boards from one wagon to another wagon. They used to be Masechet it, and it was from one Rishus HaYochid. The wagons were Rishus HaYochid. The wagons were more than 10 high, and they were more than dollar tvachim. So the wagons were considered Rishus HaYochid. They used to pass them up and down from one wagon to the other, from one Rishus HaYochid to the other, derech Rishus Harabim. So that was the Avoyas Levim in the Mishkan. They used to pass the boards from one to the other. Avaloi Zarkim, they didn't throw them. So therefore, the Rabbanan hold that Masechet, if you're Masechet, you pass it from one Rishus HaYochid to another Rishus HaYochid, and there's a Rishus Harabim be'emsa. If it's on the same line, then you're chayiv. If it's from opposite, if they're opposite each other, then you'll be potter. So this the Gemara will discuss in greater detail.